Hey, what's up guys, aarava here, and welcome back to another episode of my F1 22 My Team Career Mode. This is episode number 83 today for the Mexican Grand Prix in Season 5. If you guys did miss the previous one at the Miami Grand Prix, the first time we returned to Miami for a long time, I think since like maybe Season 2 or Season 1 even, so it felt like a new track altogether, then be sure to go check that one out before you see this one, because that actually ended up being one of the best races we've ever had in the season and on the game in terms of our driving that entire race. And actually, as Miami goes, it was very entertaining. You know, maxed out cars actually finally made that circuit really enjoyable. Plenty of action with the AI making overtakes, and yeah, like I said, for us, I think it was one of our best races of the entire season, because we didn't do so well on Saturday. We were on the back foot, but I knew there was a bit more pace in the car because Tsunoda was showing it, and we underfueled the car. And that worked a treat for us at the start of the race to jump up quite a few positions. And then we just drove what I want to say is a bit of a masterclass in terms of going longer on the medium tyres, stretching them a really decent amount, and then just playing it to an absolute T in terms of the soft compound tyre towards the end of the race to get another race victory in this season and getting more points ahead in the championship compared to the likes of Leclerc and Felipe Drugovich. Drugovich suffering a car issue in that race, as well as both Ferraris, with Schumacher DNFing and Verstappen just being painfully slow, having got pole position. He fell back to about, I think it was P7 or 8 was it by the end of it. So yeah, for all our rivals, you know, they're all tripping up over each other, whereas we just had a sublime race with no issues whatsoever really ever since we got into the Sunday of it. So now we come to the Mexican GP. We've got 4 races left, but we won't be able to get to the end of the season on the current engine components we have, because quite a few of them, all the components we have are on the teetering edge of going over 50% worn, which is a guaranteed, basically, it's going to get to about 70% then by the time you get to the end of one race weekend. We've also got, remember, Brazil coming up, which is a sprint round, so more racing action in that one race weekend. So I think Mexico is the best place to take penalties, because we know, you know, that long main straight really allows for some great overtaking, just with the DRS being very powerful. And Mexico has always been a very good circuit for us in terms of race pace and getting those moves done. So I think this is the best place to take what I hope is a final set of penalties that we need to get to the end of the season. So kind of tactically choosing it, and we just go on into Saturday, overcast conditions, but knowing that after this Q1 session, there really is no point going out anymore. We're just going to do this Q1 lap just to get a sense of how the car is feeling. You know, this is, you know, we've never driven this circuit with this level of performance of cars, so, you know, brake points might change, turn-in points, you know, gearing. So just wanted to get a feel for it in Q1 and just to suss out the competition in terms of what the pace is like. Of course, I know I can go quicker than this lap time if I was to do Q2 and Q3, so it's not really a massive kind of, you know, assessment, but it just gives me an idea. And the idea we've gotten here is that the Mercedes cars actually look very decent, along with the Haas as their 2x2, 1, 2 to 3 and 4. And the Ferraris, well, they're a little bit on the back foot there compared to where they were in Miami, but I suspect they may speed up as we go into Q2. But we make it through in P8, Tsunoda P6. That's quite promising that Tsunoda is looking up for it. I mean, he did look up for it in Miami as well, if it wasn't for then the engine penalty he took that race and then just got caught up in traffic. And by the time we get to Q2 then, obviously we haven't bothered to go out, because we know with all the penalties we're taking, we are going to take a back of the grid, so no point wearing out the fresh components we just put in. But both Mercs are through, both Haas and Aston Martin of Lance Stroll, again showing that Aston Martin are genuinely there on pace, and also both Gulf, Porsche, Williams. They struggled at Miami, but here at Mexico, clearly there's not enough corners maybe to kind of bring down the speed they have in a straight line, I think, which is where they gain most of their time for Williams. So both of them are through into Q3, and they've knocked out both Audi cars, and also Mick Schumacher failed to get through. Only Verstappen there for Ferrari, and one lone McLaren car. Of course, though, we won't know what the results are of Q3, because this is where our Saturday ends. So let's go to the grid, see how the top 10 shaked out. We know where we are, back of the grid. It's going to be an interesting one, but I think quite a fun race, actually, always coming from the back at Mexico. And with the way we've been driving off the back of that confidence-building Miami, I am feeling good. I think we can get some very good points here.
It's time then for the Mexico City Grand Prix, a race which gave Honda their first ever victory back in 1965. American Richie Ginther winning from third on the grid. Red Bull have been strong here in recent seasons, but can they keep that record going today? At 2,285 metres above sea level, the thin air of the Autodromo Hermanos Rodriguez poses a unique challenge, not just to a driver's skill, but to the efficiency of their engines as well. 17 corners then make a lap of this 2.6-mile circuit, expect incredible speeds in excess of 220 miles per hour, and overtaking into the braking zones of Turn 1 and Turn 4. Let's run you through the driver grid order for today's exciting race. Charles Leclerc lines up on pole position, and Felipe Drugovich completes the front row. Looking at the rest of today's grid, we have Verstappen, Bottas, George Russell and Stroll, Gasly, Magnussen, Ocon and Mick Schumacher, Tsunoda, Hülkenberg, Carlos Sainz and Vettel, Perez, Albon, Oscar Piastri and Lando Norris, Liam Lawson, Fernando Alonso, Ricciardo and the owner driver. It's almost time for the lights to go out, so let's head down to the track where preparations are underway. A warm welcome to Anthony Davidson, who's beside me in the commentary box today. We should talk about Williams. What do you make of their performance so far this season?
Well, the atmosphere within that team seems very positive at the moment. Everyone seems like they're in great spirits and having a lot of fun doing what they do, and that's definitely contributed to the performances we've seen.
So we're taking some inspiration from what we did in Miami, and once again I have underfueled this car to try and make it a little bit lighter than maybe our competitors around us initially. It will mean we will have to do some fuel saving. Now in Miami, the car naturally saved all the fuel because there were so many corners where you're lifting off and you're kind of, just letting the car roll through and just basically not on throttle that much, whereas Miami, because of these long straights, high-speed corners where you are almost on full throttle through them, even the Sector 2 corners, now with maxed-out cars, I've got my right foot down for quite a lot of the lap. So it's going to be a bit harder, and so there might need to be actual proper fuel-saving methods we do in this race, like lifting and coasting, short shifting, which means going up the gears a little bit quicker and not revving out the engine as much. We'll leave that to the end of the race, though, I think, on the soft compounder tyre, where the soft tyre is going to give us so much grip that it won't matter that we're maybe lifting off and trying to drive a bit slower, trying to save the fuel, and it will kind of counteract and we'll kind of hopefully meet in the middle in terms of the overwhelming tyre pace, but also the fuel saving methods, if that makes kind of sense. So right now, initially at the start of the race, just, foot to the floor, trying to make the most of the lighter car, and just trying to do what we did at Miami and cut through as many cars as possible. It's going to be harder now because there are so many more cars. It's a long run down to turn 1, and that means also we have to be extra careful with keeping our nose clean with slower cars, maybe just, flummoxing us into the first couple of corners. But here we go then, nonetheless. 4 rounds to go. We go to 5 red lights to the Mexican Grand Prix from the back of the grid. Lights out, and we're underway, and it's a pretty pedestrian start, good getaway, but that long run just means we are left for dust a little bit by the cars ahead who have started on the soft compounder tyre. And to be honest, I'm taking it easy on purpose, very easy into turn 1, just trying to roll the car through on the outside of a couple, if we can get it to the inside. Again, worried about my nose as well, getting very close to some cars up the road. Ricciardo's actually managed to stay ahead of me and get himself up to P20, but we've got at least one overtake done on Liam Lawson, and we nearly just broke our wing there. It may have not looked like it, but that could have been quite a bad crash with Piastri, as I wasn't sure where to go, and instead, thankfully, we have avoided any sort of contact with him and managed to dance the car around 3 cars, and that's actually a pretty good lap 1 and first sector, to be honest. But let's look at a quick replay straight away at the forefront, because a lot of stuff went on at the front. Leclerc on pole position, but it's going to be Verstappen who gets the best start from the first 2 rows. It's nearly 5 wide into turn 1. Drugovich takes the lead, but then locks up. Drogovic locked up into turn 1. He was in P1 actually, and I thought he would get to the apex first, but instead it's the two Mercedes cars that jockey for position. They both overtake Bottas, who was still on their inside, because once Drogovic locked up, it was 3 wide between them, but it ended up just being the two Silver Arrows fighting, and Leclerc is the one that's going to just get ahead into first place. Russell second, then you've got Bottas fending off a very quick starting Verstappen, and then Lance Stroll is in P5 ahead of Mick Schumacher, who's had a lightning getaway from being knocked out of the top 10, remember, and Drogovic there, he finds himself behind the McLaren of Gasly, having led into turn 1, so really poor mistake from Drogovic. He's making a few of them now as he, well, I don't know, we saw this last season where, of course, he's done so amazingly in this whole series, but being one of the junior drivers has less experience, maybe prone to more mistakes in that kind of way, and you're seeing it now in these pressure moments. So whilst we were discussing that, of course, you saw on screen, we got Fernando Alonso into the last sector, easy little dive bomb down the inside, catching him in the train of cars, and we're doing the same now to Sergio Perez and Alexander Albon, both of them getting caught up behind cars, Vettel as well, and we have a really good exit as we try and get the power down and drift the car through the exit. Now we're side by side with our old pal Sebastian Vettel. The two Audi sport cars not looking that quick around here, surprisingly, because Audi still are very good in a straight line, and this is an example of it, because Vettel actually comes back at me to try and re-overtake me. He's starting on the soft tyres, like a lot of cars out here in outside the top 10, because of course they have a new set to use. The guys inside the top 10, obviously they used all their soft tyres probably up through going through the different qualifying sessions, so they will definitely be doing a medium to hard tyre strategy. But for us, we know we've got a new set of soft tyres on the way, but now we're getting away from Vettel, watching Sainz pressurising Magnussen, who locks up into the stadium section and is going to easily fall behind us there. So the Gulf Porsche Williams, they both look good in qualifying, but in the race terms, both of them may be struggling for a bit of pace. Ocon is further up the road, though, ahead of Tsunoda, actually, our teammate.
Okay, if we continue to use fuel at this rate, then we won't have enough to reach the end of the race. You need to start lifting off the throttle earlier on the corners. Let the car slow down naturally before you start braking. That'll help conserve the fuel you have left.
So our engineer reminding us about our situation with the fuel. I'm actually quite surprised he actually gave us such a lengthy little lecture, but just a reminder about that. And as we look on the heads-up display, you can see that really we've not even saved that much fuel in comparison to Miami, where we had already maybe, you know, brought down the deficit as we go for a move on Carlos Sainz. Sorry, pick that up, and we squeeze him out with some aggression here. No love lost between myself and my former teammate Carlos Sainz, who we replaced mid-season, of course, with Sebastian Vettel last season. Yeah, we still have to do that fuel saving. It's going to be so much harder than Miami, as I said and alluded to in the formation lap, but we're not thinking about that quite yet. At the moment, we're just trying to make the most of these fresh mediums and the lighter car. So we're now on to lap 8, so it's been a couple of laps that it took us to actually catch up to Tsunoda. We have set a purple lap, but it has just taken a bit longer than it was maybe at Miami to get through a couple of cars. Of course, we had so much more time to actually find, because we lost time just being in all that traffic, but it's now going to pay off here, catching up to Tsunoda whilst he's behind all these cars. Can we try and make a quadruple overtake in one sector alone? Well, Tsunoda actually gets the hurry up for myself, I guess, and instead of getting overtaken, he goes and overtakes 2 cars, 3 cars maybe himself, as we go both round the outside of respective cars, the McLaren and the Aston Martin. But Tsunoda climbs up to P8, so all Yuki needed was a bit of encouragement of seeing me like his teammate there, because he made a triple over. I've not actually ever seen my teammate make a triple overtake like that in the middle of a couple of corners. I mean, we've seen Sebastian Vettel, when he was our teammate in the past, make some great dive bombs, some double overtakes, but in the middle of that very tricky section, Tsunoda just, you know, switched on as soon as he saw me next to him and overtook all 3 of those cars. We followed him through and we made those 3 overtakes ourselves on Ocon, Gasly and Hulkenberg, and we're up to P9 but it then takes a further lap to actually close back up to Tsunoda and try and set up this overtake. So this is the baffling thing. I think Tsunoda, there's a lot of lost potential. If he was driving like that all season, there's no doubt he would be scoring loads of points. We wouldn't probably even be challenged in the Constructors' Championship, but because he seems to have this thing of switching off and not fully going aggressive, going for the moves, like he is now with me as he tries to defend to maintain that position, you know, because he's got that issue when he's in traffic, he's lost out a lot of points and positions, so we get that move done into P8, but now there's quite a large 5.6 gap to Drugovich, and he is actually himself going for a move on Lance Stroll, so the Aston Martin was in the top 5, he's now down to P6 because both Ferraris are passed, and Drugovich, I'll remember having locked up a turn 1, lap 1, is trying to make up for all that time he lost basically, because he was going to be in the top 3, he was going to be basically where Bottas is at the moment in P3, but you got to say, look at the top left, looks like the Mercedes cars have this race locked down at the moment, because it's Leclerc still from Russell, Bottas, Verstappen, Schumacher, but the Ferraris aren't too far away, and neither is Bottas, but it's going to be an inter-team battle as the two Mercs may swap positions. Leclerc goes defensive, Russell on the outside with DRS, he's going to cut from left to right, Leclerc goes a bit deep there, and Russell, you can see, is on the inside now for that right-hander, so good driving from George Russell, and that may just get him up into P1 by the end of this shorter DRS section as they turn left. Russell gets to the apex first, he's P1, Leclerc down to P2, and now Bottas and Verstappen are nose to tail with them. Drugovich up to P5, we're up to P6 because Schumacher has pit already for a set of medium tyres. Is Verstappen slow? Oh no! Oh, Verstappen can't catch a break! Ferrari can't catch a break! They've got a quick car this season, but the reliability is just not there. It is not there. If they solve that for next season, Ferrari may truly be a proper force to be reckoned with, because at times they've been scarily quick, but yeah, just more and more issues. DNF for Schumacher last episode, this one Verstappen. Yeah, that is, well, it is just kind of typical Ferrari in many ways, to be honest. That very much mimics the real-life 22 season they had last year. So, for us then, in our race, we get one more free position on Verstappen then. I say one more, I mean, Schumacher's still on the race. He just pit already quite early on, because I think he was on the soft tyres, you know, Schumacher, so he's gone very early for a set of medium tyres, I believe, so I don't know whether he's trying a two-stop or what. It wouldn't surprise me if Ferrari are doing a very unorthodox, weird two-stop. That's just definitely not going to work, as we make light work of Felipe Drugovich, who just seems to have lacked a bit of confidence and aggression there after that lock-up. It seems like he just switched off, because I thought he would have given me more of a fight, although to be fair, maybe he was wearing out his tyres a little bit more, trying to close up and keep up with the top guys as we get into P1 of this race on lap 19. So 19 laps later, from last place, we're now in first place, but that's because we're yet to pit, and we know we're going longer, because everyone else behind me, they've pit for either hards or another medium or something like that, depending on which tyre they started on, because we're the only car in this fight now, in the kind of top realm, that have a fresh set of soft tyres. So we're in now, lap 23, we took these mediums, so fair old stint this has been, like in Miami, on a set of mediums, and that sets us up for a very good stint on soft tyres. We will be behind cars, but because of the soft compound pace, I'm confident we can actually do some work. The only thing that might undo us a little bit is how difficult this might be to save that fuel we're still in deficit of, because we've still got about 0.8 in the red of fuel. So that's a lot of fuel to save over the course of one small soft tyre stint. So let's see. But ahead of us is Felipe Drugovich then in P5. Then you got Russell, who's fallen behind Bottas. So Repsol Haas have managed to jump Russell in the pits. So the Finn is in third place now. Leclerc second. And this man is in first. Schumacher, he was the earliest person to pit in this entire race in terms of this top kind of 6 battle. But that undercut has meant he's in first place now. He's on mediums though, so that's so long to go. But to be fair, because he got knocked out in Q2, he definitely has a fresh set of mediums, and I took my mediums 23 laps. So maybe Ferrari are actually on a good strategy, and they're trying to win this race with Schumacher out of nowhere, because Schumacher, remember, was behind Verstappen before, I think in, what was it, P6. So he's effectively gone from P6 up to P1 with that huge undercut as we now overtake Drugovich very easily, such as the massive pace gulf of soft tyres to hards. And because of that pace gulf, I can now do some lifting and coasting, and you'll see on the right hand side as I went to turn 1, I lifted off early on throttle, go down the gears, just let the car roll through, and that's going to bring down that deficit, that red number on the bottom right on the fuel margin. And we're going to do that for a lot of corners, and where we can in the middle of sector 2 and 3, stay in higher gears and just try and keep momentum going with the car and not having to use actual throttle to keep the car going through the corners, and just basically trying to be as smooth as possible. Now, not only will this help us try and reduce the fuel burn in the middle of these corners, but also it's actually going to keep our soft tyres in check and do a bit of tyre wear saving for us. So it's kind of almost like a double whammy of the way we're driving right now, trying to protect the tyres, but more importantly, save that fuel, because I do not want to be in a very tough situation like we were. Remember Brazil last season, I think, or the season before, where we ran out of fuel on the line and we lost one position in that race right to the death. So definitely want to try and avoid that. But lap 29 then, we're catching up to Russell, and Bottas and Leclerc are only just up the road. So could P2 be a possibility? Schumacher has got a much larger gap. So Ferrari, in weird ways, finally, they may actually be on to a good strategy and may be on to just win this race then. But can I spoil the party for Bottas and Leclerc? Because we've overtaken Leclerc's teammate Russell, and because we're on a two-step softer compound, the pace difference is just ridiculous at the moment on the lower fuel. And that's including when I'm also lifting and coasting into turn 1. But even lifting and coasting, we're actually still gaining time, such as the tyre grip of this soft versus the hard. So this strategy is actually turning out to be very overpowered in a similar way to Miami, where as long as you can get to that point where you can easily strap on softs and get to the end of the race, it's going to pay out so much, because it's just so much quicker than a hard compounder tyre. And we get down the inside of Bottas while still trying to short shift and be careful with our fuel and our gearing. We're up into P3, lap 34. We're going to try and get Leclerc DRS open. And for the first time now, we're in the positive on fuel. We try to go to the inside, but Leclerc defends that and doesn't give us the room there. So we go on the left-hand side and then cut back to the racing line and onto the apex to try and defend Leclerc as he tries to maybe hamper us. But we're up into P2. But you know what now? With about 2 laps to go, with this kind of pace on the soft compounder tyre, dare I say it, could we try and catch Schumacher? He's on mediums that he's been on since, remember, like, I think it was lap, I want to say like 10 or something like that. Like, it's been a long old stint for Schumacher on those mediums, and we've been saving our softs whilst trying to save this fuel. And so this car is on absolute rails, and now that we are in the positive on fuel, I don't even have to do any lifting and coasting. So into turn 1 on the last lap of the Grand Prix, it means we end up being only 4 to 3 tenths behind Mick Schumacher. Could we pull off one of the greatest comebacks ever here, from last to first in a My Team career mode scenario in a 50% race, the heavy fuel, having to fuel save in the middle of this? Such is just how good this strategy was and how we played it to an absolute T with the tyre wear, saving the fuel at the perfect moment to now be in the positive. And Schumacher's struggling. Look at that. The rear end snapped. He's got too much tyre wear going on those mediums. He's struggling for grip. And as we go now towards the final sector into the stadium section, we close, and I sense maybe the opportunity to go for a move down the inside. We go for it. We go deep. Schumacher cuts in for the switchback. We're side by side through the next couple of corners, but onto the last corner, we're going to do it. We're going to get up into first place and win the Mexican Grand Prix from last place on the grid. And it was all from having some very solid soft tyres that still had so much tyre life left in them. Big dive bomb. We go wide. Schumacher actually cuts back in and gets first place back momentarily. But because we just kept it going and just got to the inside of him, he had to give us room. And then we're side by side. And of course, on my fresher softs, that definitely had more grip. at the end there, judging by his little snap of oversteer in Sector 2. He just couldn't out-traction us into that final crucial corner. And we managed to win it. Back-to-back wins from Miami to Mexico.
A hard-fought win today then, after a very difficult race. So, Anthony, what made the difference out there today?
I think we'll chalk this one up to a deft touch on the brake pedal. That's allowed them to challenge down the inside into the braking zones, and ultimately, if you do that often enough, you end up winning the race. It was great to watch as well though, wasn't it? Forget strategy, forget tyre management. Who doesn't love a good old-fashioned scrap?
Well, I'm thoroughly exhausted after the excitement of that race, but I'm sure it's nothing compared to our drivers here. They've worked hard to make it up there, and it's great to see them make their way onto the podium now.
This truly is becoming what is our best season on F1 22. This is the most number of wins we've had in a season by a long stretch. And we just seem a bit unstoppable at the moment. Like, the strategy calls that we've been making have been so perfect. Like, there's been countless times where, in hindsight, we've not made the right call. And finally, things are clicking for me this season where I've had enough foresight to go, no, that's the right strategy. Let's not go to the hard. Let's, trust the process of saving tyres. And also the new technique of under-fueling the car. And because of these ridiculous fuel upgrades that, to be fair, all the AI cars must be using to some extent as well, I feel, and it's just the fact that I've not used them till now, and that lifting and coasting did us so much benefit. And it's just Mexico. It's easy to overtake around here, and with a car like ours where we can just go in a straight line, get the moves done, and then also, to be fair, the other guys fighting each other didn't help them. It slowed them up. If Leclerc had no contest from Russell, he would have gone away. And then Schumacher, the only reason he was in P1 was because of that unorthodox strategy that he did to try and get the race win. But yeah, once again, we've stolen a win, and we deny Ferrari again to get their first race win this season. They must hate me now. Ferrari, they must be seething. The amount of times I've stolen a win from them this season, or they've been close to one and they've had a DNF themselves. And because Tsunoda actually did score some good points today, it means we do outscore Mercedes enough to take the lead of the Constructors' Championship. So if Tsunoda just keeps that up, and I can keep driving at this level to outscore them, both Mercedes cars, and he can get a couple of points in P8 or P7, this will be enough to also try and take the fight to Merck in the Constructors' Championship. But guys, if you have enjoyed this episode, hit the like button, let me know what you thought in the comments below. If you're around here, then do get subscribed for weekly Formula 1 content. I'll see you guys next time. Goodbye.